No response from Sir. What?
What's ONH stand for?
We're on the air.
I'll have to ask you later.
Okay. See if anybody can see us
Before
yet.
we go on, we're not on yet, right?
Nope, we're here.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Hey, everyone. It's Adam Farkas along with Paul Farkas, and welcome to the ZEISS Optometric Digital Summit 2018.
This should be an exciting morning.
This is going to be something different. So,
Absolutely.
So you know what? Unlike prior events that we've done with CEWire, this is something a little bit different. It's run by a single company, ZEISS, and we're going to be running through sort of the latest in their technologies and what they have on offer. And it should be a fun day. We're going to be talking to a bunch of people here today, speakers from the conference. We'll have a couple of other docs coming on as well, and folks from ZEISS. So this should be an interesting one.
So if you don't understand the abbreviations, I keep asking, right? So you can ask everyone.
That is true. He doesn't. Really...
I just asked, what does ONH stand for?
So these are the kinds of questions that we're going to get today, but that's okay. That's why we're having speakers coming in. So if you haven't been to, or if you're watching this on ODwire and you haven't registered for the conference yet, I would urge you to go to the conference website. The link is right beneath where we're talking. Look at it, see if you're interested, and then sign up. So by signing up, you qualify for the discounts that ZEISS is offering today.
Yeah, there should be some good ones.
And there are significant discounts. And in fact, why don't I just run through it a little bit right now as we're just getting warmed up here.
So I'll never know what ONH stands for until somebody tells me. Okay.
So hang on here. So up on the screen right now, you can see real briefly just what we have in terms of discounts. This is what ZEISS is offering to all of us today. And so you can see that to qualify for some of these things, you actually have to go into the exhibit hall and click on the chat link. Now there's a chat room, essentially, where you can type in, and this is how you qualify for the discounts. They want to make sure that people are actually registered for the conference and coming to the room. But you can see they're offering discounts on ZEISS Angioplex OCT Angiography, ZEISS HD OCT 5000, the ZEISS HD OCT 500, which is their entry-level OCT unit, the HFA, and the Claris 500, which is their wide field.
That's the big boy, isn't it?
That is the big boy, yes. So this is one of the most exciting new products. We're going to be talking to a bunch of folks about it today as well.
Yeah, it's brand new, right? It's just being introduced.
Yeah, it's fairly new. I don't know what's considered brand new in the optical industry. It's like
so we'll find out from some of our experts.
Yeah, but it is new, and we'll put it up here so you can kind of see. So what we're talking about here, the Claris 5000 is ultra wide field fundus imaging. And you can get a sense of what they mean by ultra-wide field if you look at the left side of the screen. It's pretty impressive and very clear.
And very clear, unlike the previous generations. Look at that.
Pretty nice looking, huh?
I would want that to be my retina.
You don't want to be the example in the Claris brochure, is what you're saying. So we're going to talk to a bunch of folks about Claris today. We'll run through the different products that they have here as well later, and it should be a really fun show. Hopefully folks are also coming to the live streaming page, and they can tell me what they're seeing. So if there's a chat box on the live stream page, and I'm actually at it right now. So as people walk in and out of here today, hopefully if they have questions or if they're having any issues with the show, they can just ask us.
Can they ask us questions?
Sure. I mean, if anyone is in this chat room, so again,
if you're in the chat room now, why don't you say hello so see if it's working.
This chat room actually exists on ODwire, so the people who are registered for the conference already probably are not watching us this way. They're probably just getting the video of this without this chat box. So this is only for folks who are watching through ODwire and perhaps haven't registered yet.
So we have some people that never sleep.
Shame on you.
Right?
We do.
Yeah,
there
are
some people who are up.
I'm never surprised when I wake up.
An awful lot. So, but why don't we also we have a little bit of time before we have our first call today. We can also run through what's going on at the conference. Now, hopefully this won't blow the entire system up. So, my big fear of destroying everything here. Let me see if I can show everyone what's going on at the event today. Because people are asking me, well, what kinds of talks are going to be going on? Because we do have lectures, 6 hours worth altogether over 2 days. Let me see if I can show this. So ready? Here goes. 3, 2, 1. You can do it.
Yeah, sure.
It's a lot of bandwidth. There we go.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you can sort of see here, if you just ignore the rest of my desktop here, you can kind of see, let me actually make this broader so you can all see it better. Okay, so you can see the types of things that we're talking about. I'll blow the text up too. I'll be kind
Look
to
at that.
the
The
older
first one
folks.
has 3 stars
So,
in one room.
yep. So,
Speaking, that should be very interesting.
yeah, so this looks pretty cool. So we're going to be talking about diabetes with Drs. Chowslek and Jasper. And interesting, you know, this is one that I actually got a sneak preview of. I got to record it with them. And what I'm hoping to do is, even after this is done, I'm hoping to be able to grab that video and put it up on the site, or maybe even a little bit in the live stream as a snippet so people can see it.
Will it make me stop eating Egg McMuffins in the morning?
I don't know if anything can stop that.
I don't know.
But actually, this
These scare lectures, you know,
This lecture, actually, out of all of them, will scare you straight because Dr. Chows talks, you know, really in detail about the demographics and what's going on right now with
absolutely.
diabetes, and it really is kind of scary. So, other one, macular OCT interpretation with Dr. Lederer, and he's an OMD, and he's going to take you through all about how to interpret macular OCT scans. I got a sneak peek of these slides too. Looks very good, very straightforward. He makes things very clear. In fact, he draws cartoon pictures of he has cartoon pictures of the OCT next to
That's
a real
the best,
OCT.
right.
So you can actually see, like, okay, this is what this layer is describing, you know, as a cartoon.
That's terrific.
So you can see stuff. So he makes it very easy, and it's a very practical lecture. So hopefully people tune in. At 1 p.m. Eastern today, we have the Ultra Wide Field Imaging 2.0, the periphery, the macula nerve, and more. And so this is, again, all about that wonderful new Claris 500 unit, the wide field imaging unit.
And again, with 3 speakers.
With 3 speakers, and they're going to talk about what, you know, how they actually use the device. This is more of a roundtable or panelist kind of discussion with actual clinicians really talking in the trenches how they can implement this in their practice.
Now, and the speakers are there live, so if they have questions, they can ask.
Correct.
In real
So
time.
in the lecture hall, if you ever attended a CEWire, you'll know this. As you're watching the lecture, there's also a chat box where the speakers you can ask them questions and they can type back to you as the lecture.
And one nice part, if you you have to leave the room for whatever reason, and you miss part of the lecture, it'll be online, right? On demand for the next month.
Yeah, so these lectures will be on demand for the month, so you can always come back and get them. You know,
So
fortunately, it's not like CEWire where you had
to
multiple
be
tracks
there.
going on, and it's
No credit today,
and you run.
Yeah, and so if you decide you want to miss the one that's at 12 noon Eastern,
Yep.
you can always catch it later if you want to go over to the exhibit hall, for example.
Right.
So you can always catch up.
And tomorrow, you can see here, we have cases about glaucoma. We have the ZEISS Glaucoma Workplace, which is part of their Forum suite, and we're going to talk about Forum a lot, I think, over the next 2 days. So Forum is ZEISS's software package that can help you pull together sort of all the data that these machines are generating. Because this is one of the most difficult challenges, right? Because these pieces of equipment generate a lot of data. And the question is, how do you take that and manage it and, you know, turn it into something meaningful? That you
So
can
it'll
understand.
allow optometrists not to keep referring glaucoma out, but actually be able to manage it in your practice.
Absolutely. I mean,
and bill for it
if
as
you're
well.
if you're making the investment in this kind of equipment, you absolutely should be managing all of the stuff in house, and Forum can help you do that. And we're going to be talking to you know, some of the product managers at ZEISS too to just describe it a little more, because you know, it's kind of as I was researching it a little bit more, Forum is kind of an encompassing term for their entire software package. And it works in a variety of different ways. So we'll be checking that out. And again, we're going to be talking about the Retina Workplace, which is, again, another part of the Forum software that focuses on retina. And Samantha Healy will be here talking to us about that too. So lots of good stuff coming up over the next 2 days. It's a short conference, but I think an interesting one. And especially with those discounts being, you know, tied in, I think it's going to be really helpful if you're looking for equipment, you know, to take advantage of some of these specials that they're offering, and you can see them up on the screen right now. So that is that, and we're going to be leading off in a few minutes, I guess about 20 minutes, with Dr. Steve Silverberg, who's going to talk to us a little bit about equipment purchasing.
Yeah, well, the good part of Steve is just, for those of you that are not on ODwire a lot, Steve is a frequent poster.
Yes.
But not only that, but he is the brains. Adam is the tech person behind CEWire. When So you have any complaints, you go to Adam. But Steve is really the brains of getting the speakers because he's on the lecture circuit, so he knows speakers, and that's why we have to give him credit for the quality of the speakers that we have on CE Wire, equal to the quality of the speakers today, by the way. Some of whom are on CE Wire as well.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, Steve's job is really a challenging one because he goes in and looks at all of the lectures and the lecturers and vets them and takes the tests and
he's the one that keeps if they haven't submitted the programs. He's
right.
on their tail.
He's the one. So
so you know, and so you got to ask, what do I do for CE Wire? Really, not a damn thing.
Eye candy? I don't know.
I'm the window dressing there. Well, on ODwire, I do promote a little bit.
Yeah, just a little. So, but we're going to have Steve up because Steve is he purchases a lot of equipment and high ticket equipment.
Yeah,
too.
well, he's in a private practice in New Jersey.
Yep.
A multi-associate OD practice.
Yep.
Very heavily medically oriented. So he does a lot of billing.
Yep.
So we hope during his talk, in the first one, he'll not only be talking about ZEISS equipment, but how you bill for it. I think he should be able to cover that as well.
I think and this isn't just about ZEISS equipment, this is about equipment in general, because when he buys something, it doesn't matter what brand it is, he's always thinking about how is this going to generate
when
a
he's going to
return?
pay for
and how can you fit it into your practice so that it becomes an integral part of it, because otherwise it's going to languish. So
and he'll be out of breath because he did us a favor by being the first speaker on, and he has hours, so he'll be speaking right from his exam room.
He called me actually just a few minutes before we went on the air that he's got a patient in the chair and he had an emergency. So hopefully he'll
be almost on time, and
hopefully he'll be on time and we can talk to him about it. So.
Okay.
So in the interim, I have my computer popped open here, and we'll see how things are going here and see if anyone's coming in. My biggest concern this morning, of course, was that everyone could log into the conference okay, right? This is always the thing that scares me the most. Can people get in? So hopefully people are getting in okay without much
If
of a
you got in
problem.
okay, why don't you send us a note so we stop worrying?
Well, if they're in okay, they're probably ignoring us completely and watching the lectures already.
Your lectures have begun already.
Yeah, so I just want to
started.
make sure that they're okay. So these topics are fully loaded. So so at least we know that we're on there. We have someone from Saudi Arabia watching us, so there we go.
Oh,
so
great.
I'm glad to know the stream is working.
Saudi Arabia is 9 hours. Probably no more than
more
that.
than
Europe.
that. Yeah.
So it's evening there.
Yeah.
Well, welcome.
Good for you and your dedication of showing up and watching this thing at night, because most people wouldn't. For us here, it's only 8 a.m. here on the west coast of the U.S. So this looks good. So everything's working fine, and we will be able to get Steve. One thing that I'd like to show people too, since we're here, let's just run through it. I started mentioning a little bit about the equipment that ZEISS is going to be showing off in the exhibit hall today, and let me quickly go through it just so everyone knows what we're talking about here with these discounts, because ZEISS makes an awful lot of stuff.
Yeah.
One thing I guess I didn't really appreciate as I walk through their booths all the time at the shows is just how much stuff, the different lines of equipment they do make. So the Claris 500 is what we've been talking about this morning with ultra wide field imaging that just gives you some spectacular, literally eye-popping pictures that come out of this unit. So you can see a few here. And other products, though, that they're going to be talking about today, the ZEISS line of OCT products. So ZEISS is a family of OCTs. First one they're going to be talking about is with the angioplex. So angiography, is this something you know anything about? Angiography, this wasn't from your day, was it?
No.
Okay. So being able to look at blood vessels in real time to check out how the blood flow is doing. Now, in the olden days of angiography, this was a surgical procedure, right? To do angiography, you had to inject something into a blood vessel, some contrast, and then you could image it. So these days now, angiography is getting much less invasive, and you can team up a ZEISS unit here with what they call angioplex to take OCT and angiography all in one. And if you look on the screen on the right side, you can see pictures of the blood vessels right there on the right. So you can get a really good sense of the blood flow just using your OCT with angioplex. So there's a better picture of it, just so you can get a sense. Those are obviously blood vessels. Also, again, talking about OCT, the ZEISS HD OCT 5000. So this is the Big Daddy OCT unit that they have. They have a bunch of new features for it. This PanoMap analysis, which can do wide field structural damage assessment for glaucoma.
Wow.
So this new anterior segment module, so smart HD scan patterns. You can see all kinds of features that they're building into the software to try to enhance the functionality of these devices. And that's the HD5. And now the 500, so if you, so the 5000 is the sort of the Big Daddy one. The 500 is more entry level. So if you're looking to just get into OCT,
Sure.
this might be a place to start because the cost is lower. And so they're going to be talking about that too. You can see it's a compact unit. It's easy to use. Doesn't look intimidating. I think the industrial designers have done a good job these days to make these things look a little friendlier.
The footprint is small.
The footprint is too small. And again, so they talk about why invest in OCT and why ZEISS specifically, showing the different features. And again, all of this stuff is in the exhibit hall where they actually have movies set up showing you all of this stuff. So not just these little static brochures that I'm showing you, but they have actual demos that you can look at. And you can talk to folks at ZEISS as well. You can just text them right there. The sales folks are there. And you can check that out. So a lot of stuff about the 500 there.
Yeah, so you can find out what it's going to physically cost you, what the discount is,
Yep.
and how do you pay for it.
And financing, right? So you can see here that they work with financing groups as well.
Sure.
So you can figure that out. Now, ZEISS has other products as well. The ZEISS Photo 800 and 600, which is integrated OCT and fundus imaging all in one. And this was a product I knew very little about, but there again, it's in the exhibit hall. They'll talk about it. Sort of an all-in-one system, which is cool. Perimetry, so they have the HFA3. So this is something that I guess every office should use or could use. So the latest version of the Humphrey Field Analyzer, and they talk about that as well in terms of its new features, including SITA Faster, which is this new feature that they keep talking about. I guess the whole idea is you want to be able to do perimetry as fast as you can.
Absolutely.
This is what I'm getting here from all their materials, and that this unit will allow you to do it as quickly as possible, and again, as simply as possible, which is another important thing. And so they go on about that. And then they also discuss in the exhibit hall, again, there are movies about this instead of just static displays, Forum, the software packages that tie the whole thing together. Because as you can see,
Right.
this high-tech equipment, without something like that, you'd be in real trouble trying to put it all together.
It's interesting. Optometrists routinely complain, many complaints all of the time. One of the complaints is that they don't get their share of Medicare patients.
Mm-hmm.
That optometry seems to deal with younger people. Where do the old folks go? And the old folks are becoming more and more because baby boomers now have reached the age of retirement and Medicare for baby boomers. So if you have the equipment that will be able to evaluate painlessly their pathology, word will get out among the elderly. They do speak in the heated swimming pools of Florida about my doctor and your practice. And so
Right.
if you can have that type of, and you can ask Steve, his practice has grown exponentially because he keeps a medical model.
Right.
And he doesn't worry about the discounters or the mail order people
Right.
or all the whining that optometrists do. If you do something that will hit a specific market and you can get those Medicare patients in, happily the federal government still does reimburse very fairly for this. So
Sure.
it's useful.
Yep. So yeah, we're going to talk to Steve in just a few minutes here to talk about his practice and what he's doing around the medical model and,
Right.
and all of this equipment.
So to me, the magic here is that we have had an amazing response. I guess free is a reason, but the number of people that have signed up is incredible, especially for a new venture. We got to thank ZEISS for allowing this. This is a risk on their part to be able to do this online. They're the first, to the best of my knowledge, to use our CE Wire type of platform to have live lectures in real time live exhibits in real time, discounting as if they're in a live exhibit hall.
Yep.
And they took a real risk on this, and happily they're being rewarded mightily. I think as we zero in on 1,000 people, how many meetings do you go to where you start getting these large numbers of people attending the lectures and also the exhibit hall?
Sure. I mean, even the typical in-person optometry conference, if they draw, 1,500 people, 1,500 doctors,
That's
big.
a national.
That's a national meeting. That's like the AOA.
But
the
the
biggest
state
ones,
meeting?
like Expo, maybe 3,000. So state meetings, you have 40, 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, depending on the state. They're much smaller.
And how many people will come from Saudi Arabia
Right.
to attend the meeting?
Yep.
So we have people from Asia and from Europe
Yep.
that are attending. And happily, I'm always amazed at the number where, even though English is their second language, we see them on ODwire, they're really verbal and understand everything that's going on.
Yep.
So no subtitles needed.
Nope. And I think one thing that everyone should really appreciate, and why ZEISS is able to offer discounts, just like other vendors who do CEwire, it's the same way. The cost of putting on one of these shows is much less than actually putting on a real show. I mean, especially for equipment vendors, because the cost of transport, just of transport of this equipment and setup, is gigantic. You can easily exceed $50,000 transporting this high-tech equipment. If you think about, ZEISS's booth, let's say, at Vision Expo.
And to set it up, I mean, and the exhibit halls. Remember when we went to an AOA meeting in Florida?
I remember. I remember that.
But
Terrible.
Adam, let me talk us into that. What did we try to market? ODwire. We set up an ODwire booth. Was that what we did?
This
was some sort of booth. So we became
ago.
vendors for one. They didn't have the air conditioning on for the first. Can you imagine Florida at an AOA meeting in June not having air conditioning on?
Well, for vendors, they don't care when you're setting up, right? They only turn it on when the participants get there. But it was
sweat.
It was toasty. But more important than the heat, it was really expensive. Even for a small 10 by 10 booth, you're talking thousands upon thousands of dollars. So for vendors, this is a much less expensive way to reach out to people. So I think
that's why you'll never see us at a booth again.
Probably not.
If you don't go on ODwire on your own, tough.
I mean, I'll happily sit in somebody's booth if they want to give me some space to sit down, and I'll enjoy the carpeting and stuff. But it's a losing proposition at a lot of these conferences to pay for a booth yourself. And I can throw numbers out to tell you, but even those tiny booths, the ones where they stick the small vendors in the back, like far away from everyone else.
The lonely guys.
The lonely guy ones. Even those start, at $5,000 just for the space with nothing. And, typically they're more than that even. So it's a lot.
So be nice to the vendors when you walk around. Spend a few minutes.
Yes.
Say hello to them. Even the guys in the back.
Even the guys in the back, they're lonely and they need your help. So I always feel worst actually for the ones who are far in the back, and then there are the bathrooms in the corner, and the people are just walking by to go to the bathrooms.
Yeah. So that's awful.
It's very sad.
That's the way it is.
Yep. So, all right. So let me pull this up here and see what we got going on this morning. Okay. So I think it's almost time to get Steve. I'm going to give him a few more minutes though, just because
he said he needed a few more.
Well, he said he could be there by 8:30, but I'm going to still, I'm going to be nice. He's probably still got a patient in the chair. I don't want to interrupt patient care. Hey, buddy. Sorry, we just have my executive producer is out there walking around. He's 9. He's like, how come I can't use the internet this morning? I'm like, well, we're doing something with the bandwidth here. So, yeah. All right. So, let's see. And it looks like the first lectures have started up already. So, that's pretty cool. Let's see.
What do the exhibit booths look like? Can you show a picture?
Sure. So let me watch me, of course, blow everything to smithereens. Let me. I got to be careful here because it could try to pull up a video, and then this will be the end of us. So, but just so you can sort of get a sense of what this looks like. So inside the booth, we can take a look kind of at what's going on here.
So each booth has their own set of equipment? Is that the way it works?
Yeah, so for this particular conference, we set it up so that the Fundus Imaging has theirs, Cirrus has another one, Forum has another one, perimetry, and then the sort of the others, slit lamps and everything else goes all
And
the
they
way.
have representatives that are expert in each of them. So if you have technical questions,
Yep.
these are the people that can answer them.
Yep. So yeah, so folks are standing by via text chat and so forth. I'm going to click on this and hope that it doesn't blow everything up. Because it's hard here doing the streaming stuff. So, but you can get a sense of, okay, good, this doesn't start automatically, but you can sort of see that there's videos that play with product demos and product info and wellness programs, and then a chat window on the right. And so you can chat with people publicly, and then once you get somebody's attention publicly, then you can take it private. So you can see over here on the right side of the screen that this is the public chat window for this particular booth. So very much like you amble on into a booth.
But the salesperson can answer you privately if
Correct.
it's money problems.
Once the conversation starts, then the salesperson can take it private with you via private chat. This is just sort of like you walk into a booth, you say, hey, I'm interested in this Claris 500, tell me about it. Then the salesperson takes you aside, and then you can have a private
It'll
conversation.
be just private conversation.
Yep. And then again, they list the show specials here as usual, and so forth. Testimonials from other docs, some white papers. So there's all kinds of information about each device. And we broke it out by device type. So, which made sense, right? I mean, if you're interested in the Claris 500, you might not want to have to wade through something about slit lamps. So we split everything up into different rooms.
So imagine what would it cost ZEISS if they had 4 booths at a major meeting that has close to 1,000 people?
Oh, so yeah, so you're talking about something that's AOA sized maybe. It's a huge amount of money. You're into 6 figures. By the time you actually set up the booth, get everything there, get the people to staff it,
And the AOA ain't cheap.
Yeah, I don't know how much it actually costs for their gigantor booth at a conference like that. I don't know what the floor space costs, but it's a lot. So they're into 6 figures. So for vendors, the more they can do things like this, where, I mean, let's be honest, this is cheap for a large company. Too cheap, right? Well, we like to think so, but yeah. So they like to do this stuff because it just makes good financial sense, because a lot of the information that they're imparting, you really can do virtually. Now, some of it, as big a virtual person as I am, I know that some of the stuff you have to do in person. You just have to. There's some things that you want to touch it, you want to feel it. It's like buying a car. You don't want to do necessarily the whole thing over the internet.
But if you touched it and felt it, this is the place to close the deal.
Yeah, I mean, so just like when you actually buy a car these days, 99% of people don't walk into a dealer to buy a car. You go online first, and you start negotiating with people online beforehand, and you learn everything about the car beforehand online. The actual dealer part of it is the very last piece.
Oh, it's like I just bought a car.
So
you helped me
yeah,
to get it online.
Yeah.
And it was waiting for me when I went to the dealer. No negotiations, and
it's just it's more efficient for everyone. So yeah. So anyway, that's the exhibit hall, and let me turn that off for a second. Hey, I'm surprised this hasn't blown up yet.
wait,
Wait, right?
the day is young.
Okay, so let me see if Steve is ready. I haven't seen him yet in the, usually he texts me or says, hey, I'm ready to talk, but I haven't seen that yet, so. Let's see. No Steve? No Steve.
Anyone else watching us that has a question, we can answer.
We
We have
can.
about 2 minutes to answer a question. So type away.
Well, one thing that people always talk about or ask me about is the next CE Wire, right? I get questions about this all the time. And since we are here in the CE Wire studio, I may as well start talking about it.
You're going to give them a first, what we're planning for next month?
So, yeah. What the heck? Went out by popular demand. So if anyone's out there listening. So CE Wire 2019 is going to happen again as usual in January. It's going to be the extravaganza that everyone knows and loves.
Right.
Again, we're going to try to, in terms of the audience size, just to let everyone know, CE Wire now ranks up there just below Vision Expo in terms of the number of people that show up to each one. It's big. And I think what we've decided is that January date is pretty good for us. People seem to like it. They like being trapped in their houses in January. So we're going to keep doing it.
Keep doing about the same weekend.
Same weekend. We're going to probably have a similar number of credits this year. We might change up the content a bit. We might add some new speakers, mix it up a little bit. You know, you don't always want to hear the same voices over and over again.
But the special that we're doing coming next month.
So one of the big complaints about CEwire, which is out of our control a lot of the time, is that the conference itself is too short. So as you know, it goes on for a
3 months
weekend.
is too short. I don't believe that.
All right. Well, despite what you believe, people tell us 3 months is too short and that they want more time for the on-demand period. It's challenging for us to do, though, because a lot of the best speakers in eye care don't want their lectures sitting online indefinitely.
Absolutely not.
And so they have very legit concerns for why they don't want that, and we totally understand.
It takes a tremendous amount of time and effort to put together a lecture.
Now,
an hour.
so 3 months was the deal that we struck initially, is long enough time so that people can watch it, short enough time so that the speaker doesn't feel like their material is just sitting out there forever. However, COPE approval lasts for a year on a lot of this material. So
it's 2 years.
I don't.
Yeah, it's 20. We're going to be doing from 2017.
So 2 years from the time
you submit,
right?
Yeah.
So from the time you submit to the time that we actually show you the video, right? Because the show is in January. There's a lag time of several months because we actually have to get this stuff prepped beforehand. So what we're trying to do now, this is all a roundabout way of saying, is we were able to talk to a few of our speakers who did some of the most popular lectures from the last CEwire.
The number with the greatest number of visits.
And so we're doing a quote, best of CEwire, where we took just a small subset of those lectures and we're hanging them back up again online.
It's going to be
for
about
people
14
to watch.
hours?
Yeah, it's going to be small. You know,
14 hours and 2 months.
And you
take 14 hours.
And you'll have 2 months to do those. If you already registered for CEwire 2018, you're going to be getting this gratis. I'm going to try to find a way. I got to just work on the software. This is like headache number 1,000 to actually put your registration into that new site. So when you log in again, the lectures will just be there again.
If you're new to CEwire, or you took it in 2015, 2016, or 2017, the cost for 14 credits is modest.
It's going to be low because, again, it's only 14 credits. It's only for 2 months. But we want to give people a chance to come and experience what they missed before we start planning for the big conference again in January. Right. So this is like a little mini thing that we're doing.
We have a heart for the recent graduates, students, all the people that just can't really afford to go to meetings and pay these big bucks.
And let's be honest, too, it's towards the end of the year. So I know that a lot of people start to have their credits run out depending on what state you're in. And so, you know, we want to be, if you're desperate for those last minute credits, we want you to have a spot where you can actually go and get them and not have to pay a fortune to get them. So anyway, that's coming soon. You know, we're going to talk about that as soon as this conference is over and in the can. Remember, this conference runs for a month after tomorrow. So. And
the best part of this short one is we don't have to be on the air for 14 hours.
So there's no live component to this best of CEwire. There's no live. It's just going to be there for the lectures for the people who need them. So that'll be that. So that said, what time is it? And is Steve around?
Okay, we gave him an extra 5 minutes. So
okay, Steve said he's ready. So I'm going to try the number that he gave me, and we will see. In the meantime, though, while I get the number punched in here and hopefully get it to work, let me just put up the specials again so people can look while I'm calling Steve. Hello, computer. Thank you. It's not easy.
Yeah, well, Steve will be a very important first lecture. Happily, we'll be taping this, recording it so others can listen to it. But he will give you, from the trenches, how he uses ZEISS, how he makes ZEISS pay for itself, and why ZEISS for equipment.
Okay.
Okay, so
here we go. I'm going to try Steve. For better or worse. 583 979.
So for those that don't, we spoke about Steve before. Steve is the brains behind CEwire.
Wait a moment.
as far as speakers.
Hang on, let's see if we can get him here.
Doctor's office.
Hi, this is Dr. Farkas calling for Dr. Silberberg.
Sure, hold on, please.
Comfortable setting that puts you and your family at ease. For your convenience, we even...
Hello, Farkases.
Hi,
Hey,
Steve.
How's it going?
If your ears were burning,
real
we
good.
were talking all about you during the past half hour and how you really make CE wire work versus us just hanging on there.
I'll take some credit, but I give most of the credit to you guys. No problem. See what, but it is great. You got anybody who's listening to this or will listen in the future, you don't realize the amount of work that Paul and Adam do, especially Adam with dealing with some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. But he's brilliant. So I'm all ears.
Okay, well,
by the way,
anyway,
so-
let's get started
yes.
because we have a lot of speakers.
Yeah, so
coming.
Steve, here's the thing. One thing that we know is that you buy a lot of equipment, and in fact, I had been with Steve in exhibit halls where I saw him actually ante up for an expensive piece of equipment, and when I almost fainted when I saw him buy this thing. But as he did it, he started making a rational case for it and how he was going to use it in his practice, and how it would actually start paying for itself quickly. So
So that's the question then. What criteria do you use before you decide on technology?
Exactly what you said. We are a practice. We want to give our patients great care, but it's also business. We want to have at least not buy every single piece of equipment that's out there, especially the expensive ones, and wind up not being able to make a profit in your practice. So what Adam's referring to, for example, was a wide field camera, which is made by another company with a laser, and it's returned tremendously on the investment. Also, the patient's wow factor was fantastic, and I was able to give better care. Sometimes, for example, with that particular instrument, and I'll segue into ZEISS's new instrument, somebody comes in with flashes and floaters, and before I even see them, I see the retinal detachment, and they're out within 5 minutes because you don't have to examine them at that point in time because you've seen it in the pre-testing. The trouble is, in this day and age, we've always branded our practice to be the highest technology, the best practice you can have in terms of equipment, but things are coming out so fast and furious that it's impossible to get every and any new piece of equipment that improves your practice incrementally. I have my eye on that new ZEISS wide field camera that my sales rep has been in our office and showing us. And as soon as my other instrument is paid off, which will be in another year or so, it was that long ago, Adam, that I bought that, then I'll probably be purchasing that. So it's a combination of, you want to give the patients the best care. Sometimes even a lot of these instruments that I've purchased in the past don't have a code. You can't bill for them. Sometimes you'll charge the patients a nominal fee to do it, and that's always nice. And sometimes you'll do it, and the wow factor alone brings patients into the office, and even though the doctors might refer to have that test done. So I divide it up into, will it help the patient first, will it help my practice first, and does it make economic sense? Even if it's a slight loss, it's okay. If it's revenue, it's fine. And if it's profit, well, that's a little better. Mm-hmm. By the way, I was listening to Paul Chaucer's lecture before your call, and there's another instrument that I have my eye on that's ZEISS that makes it's an OCT with angiography capability. And what they were showing me in just the 20 minutes I was at the lecture was just amazing. It's so hard nowadays, Paul, because of the fact that, as I said, technology is increasing so much, and you want to buy things that are a quantum leap from what you have, but sometimes you have to just go with the flow and get what you think is the best for your practice and best for your patients.
Steve, I made the point before that if you want to have Medicare patients, which is an ever-increasing number, having all this equipment that works with pathology seems to be a practice builder. Is that the case? Have you found that your demographics are getting some older people in that you didn't have before?
Absolutely. In fact, I know you guys run ODwire, and it's amazing when people say, well, they have no pathology in their practice. when I come in, typically, let's say in the weekday mornings from 9 to 12, my average patient is probably 81, 82 years old, because they're either glaucoma patients, people with diabetes, macular degeneration, because that's who can come in then. And it just builds from there. Not only that, but when you start doing good care and you send the letters out to the primary care practitioners and the retinal specialists, they send you patients, and that's another way of building the practice. And I know one retinal practice refers to us exclusively for low vision, and as well as doing routine eye care because they feel more comfortable with us. When they visited our office and they saw some of the equipment that we had, they went on and bought the equipment. So we had it before the retinal specialist did, and that was a nice event. So it's many ways that it builds the practice, and you have to brand your practice that way and let people know that, they know when they come in. It's very timely. Just over the last 2 weeks, an ophthalmologist who was in his early 70s just closed his office, and suddenly we're getting an influx of patients who can't believe the infrastructure, the equipment, the testing that they never had done by an OMD. And not that, I'm not saying that others aren't as good or better than me, but in this particular case, they were wowed by the technology and wowed by the explanation of what we're doing and why we're doing it and why it was never done. And quite frankly, we've picked up some pathologies that were extent that the previous doctor didn't.
And
So,
it takes more and more to wow them. I remember in my day, if I used a slit lamp on a patient, they say, "Doctor, I've never had an exam like this before."
Oh,
So-
sure. The beginning, when I was first starting out, I'd have people look in the lensometer and focus it so that the reticles were clear. and I said, "Oh, it's at 0. Very good." In other words, there was no technology, so you were just using a device to kind of almost fool them in that day. And obviously, you didn't use it, but it's gotten so much. Even in the in your Melu, the contact lens field, we're using the keratograph now to measure the meibomian glands and show the people pictures. Now that will do for free, for example, but it then generates a lot of dry eye visits, a lot of good care because of that, and we have a whole protocol, and you have to have good staff members. We can't do the testing. There's one doctor famous on ODwire who does all his own testing, but I could not. And most of the time people come in, previous patients or people who are new to the office, based on their symptoms, will order pre-testing before seeing us, and it makes it a lot more efficient. But getting back to your original point, the technologies are increasing in leaps and bounds, whether it be retinal imaging, anterior segment imaging, and diagnostic testing that pretty soon we'll be able to do fluorescein angiographies without injecting dye in the arm, and that'll be fantastic.
Yep.
And ZEISS products are second to none as far as the diagnostic, and I know they're in the treatment field also, but that's not part of my practice.
Right. So, I have a question before we talk about ZEISS and their particular equipment. When you purchase something, and I remember when you purchased that gigantic device, you were talking about tax considerations back then. Then, of course, my eyes glazed over, but this is an important thing. Can you speak to, especially now with the changes in the tax code that have been going on, tax considerations for purchasing a device?
Sure. Well, first of all, the 179 election, which what you're referring to, which allows you to depreciate the equipment all in 1 year, or the year that you purchase it, that hasn't changed. And I believe that Trump made it permanent. Every year they would, in October, November, December, reinstitute it, but now it's permanent. That means if you buy a piece of equipment for, well, let's just take numbers. Let's say you buy a piece of equipment for $50,000. You now made $50,000, or your practice did. If you have a partner, $25,000 each, comes right off your tax obligation. Now, the numbers have changed, but let's say you're in the 28% tax bracket. That'll save you in taxes $50,000, let's say, $15,000 a year. What it works out to be with the old numbers, and pretty close, because the tax rates of brackets have changed because of Trump's tax law that's going to be really instituted in 2019 when you pay your bill, but 2018 taxes. Not to get complicated, it essentially works out that for most ODs in making a decent income, the first 2 years of the lease are paid for by your tax savings. So you have a free ride the first 2 years, and then the last 3 years you're still paying the lease, but if it's a piece of equipment that's built your practice up over the first 2 years, if it generates income like a lot of these instruments do, then there's no risk at all. So you're correct, and most people should talk to their accountant about it. And it's something. Now, the way it works in a tax-wise is that if you are having a really good year, you can deduct all the money the first year. So you buy a $50,000 piece of equipment, you're making $250,000. Now you're making $200,000. But if you say, well, gee, I might want to spread it over 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, the tax laws allow you to do that also. So it's very flexible. So everybody has different situations economically, and they should talk to their own CPA or accountant or business advisor as to what's best for them that particular year.
Right.
Some people even make decisions. Let's say I have my eye on buying the Claris 500, and you're having a good year. Well, you want to purchase that in December of 2018, so you can get the tax write-off that year. And that's a big consideration because, again, it's a business as well as a practice. But if you can improve your patient care and do it for free for 2 years, why not do that?
Yep. And unlike an automobile, this equipment doesn't depreciate, so you can sell it after you've taken your full depreciation and start all over.
Well, you know, Steve,
a new practitioner can start again.
Steve, I wanted to ask you about that. What is these days? Do people lease a lot of this equipment versus purchase it outright?
Well, I call lease, but a lease for me for my whole career has been $1 buyback. So you're actually buying it. Mm-hmm. So at the end, you owe nothing. So you're leasing it and you actually have to write them a check for $1 at the end to make it a contract. So you're buying it with a 5-year loan. Now, that large piece of equipment that I bought about 4 years ago, we had a 0% interest payment because of the fact that at that time interest rates were so low it didn't matter. An interesting thing that I won't mention his name, but my ZEISS representative has been on my case to purchase 1 or 2 of the new instruments. And sometimes sales reps will actually give you a better deal and take that instrument back. I don't know if they resell it. I don't know exactly what they do, but you get it. You might be able to get rid of older technology that's paid for, of course, because you can't give it away when you still have a lease on it, and you wind up having a better deal. So some things are worth nothing. Some things are worth a great deal, depending on the type of item it is.
Yeah. So what type of equipment do you have now? What's the ZEISS equipment do you have?
We right now, in terms of ZEISS, I have both their visual field testers. We have the Matrix, which is a basic screening tester. It can do threshold fields. We don't use it for that. And then we have their elaborate Humphrey HFA field tester with great statistics. They just added some new features to it, so it does great comparisons of fields, etc. Unfortunately, in terms of the OCT space, they came out a little bit later, and I get things early. And sometimes when you get something early, like a Tesla, it's great. But when you get an OCT early, I got a high resolution OCT, but I won't mention the company. But it's good, it works, and but it's now fully paid for, and it's lived its lifetime. We had it about 6 years or so. So really, ZEISS, I have 2 large pieces of equipment. I will say one thing. I know it's not part of this convention, but we also almost exclusively use ZEISS ophthalmic lenses. We find the quality is great, the sales force is great, the support is fantastic, and essentially for all the vision plans, they allow us to use the highest quality ZEISS progressive lenses, etc. So in their ophthalmic space, they've got me as their partner because I've always loved their technology. So the answer is we only have the 2 visual field testers now, but we're going to, and we have tons of their optical lenses, but we're going to be adding probably the ultra high wide field instrument and the OCT with capability of angiography probably in the next year or 2.
Great. Yeah, and in fact, I'm going to look to you as a test case for that wide field in terms of what happens with your old one when you make that move over. We were talking earlier about how it's kind of like baseball contracts, right? You have a gigantic one that you're waiting for it to expire before you can actually make the next move. So sales cycles for these high dollar value items are pretty long. But I guess that's good because it gives you time to really think about it.
Exactly. Now, this instrument is not Jacoby Ellsbury or Cespedes, meaning it still works. And it's at the office.
Doesn't have bad heels.
But it's more like a contract that is at the end where,
Right.
how can I say it, the ball player is performing but is not performing as well as somebody that you can get cheaper. And by the way, that particular company, I can get a better instrument for about 2/3 that price now. So that's one thing about technology, as you know. Things get better and things get cheaper over time. So, for example, the ZEISS instruments that we talked about, and perhaps we'll say a few more words about, those instruments probably are a little bit pricey at this point, but if you wait, you just, if you don't have anything, I would tell anybody to at least take a first look at it. But if you have something that's old and not giving your patients the best care, certainly it's something to consider.
Right. Well,
And by the way,
I mean, with tech, those, and I think it's an important lesson that everyone needs to learn with tech items. You can wait forever. Don't do it. Because, I mean, looking around us here, the studio that we started setting up in 2015 for the first CE wire, we could probably assemble something similar today for half the cost. But we would have lost out on 3 years of actually doing this.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
yeah, you
have to make the plunge, and a lot of it is dependent on what type of practice you have. I think a group practice is the best because you can afford to buy these things that an individual practitioner can't. But sometimes they can get it in the aftermarket, used, etc. For example, my wide field laser instrument probably can be bought by a local practitioner, and I would sell it for probably 10 cents on the dollar when I finally get rid of it.
right.
So how do you manage when you have all this equipment? I know many optometrists practice in limited space. How do you manage to get the equipment into a single space?
Good question, Paul. About 9 years ago, I had an office that was 1,500 square feet. Now we moved to an office space of 5,500 square feet. So it was a challenge with that small space, and we had to be very creative. The matrix was in my office, meaning my business office. We had pieces of equipment. One piece of equipment we had in actually the dispensary, so it was all over the place, and obviously that generated the move. Now, what my wife said, you're crazy moving to this big space. You're never going to be able to use it or fill it. You don't need it. Well, we're busting out of the seams now. So you're correct. It does take more space. The one good thing that's happening is that the footprints of a lot of these instruments are getting smaller. Another rival company, for example, I just saw came out with an air puff machine that's also an autorefractor and keratometer all built into the same instrument. So that takes the space of 2 or 3 instruments and puts it into one space. The wide field camera has gotten smaller and smaller over time. So the companies realize it. But no matter how much square footage you have, no matter how much space you devote to testing and pre-testing, you always find that you need more. And certain types of tests require a room dedicated for it. I have something called a VEP machine with visual potential through a rival company, and it needs a dark environment. You can't have anybody else in the room to do the test properly, so you wind up using a lot of your space for the pre-testing equipment. I would say our examination rooms are about 1/5 the square footage, and 4/5 is the pre-testing. I'm not counting waiting room, ophthalmic area, business office, etc. So the greater space is taken up by this equipment. I would love to sometimes have certain equipment in my examination room, but with several examination rooms, it's almost impossible going from room to room. I've seen offices where they have everything in one room because it's a one doctor office and he does all the testing, and it works well there. But ours seems to be the spread out procedure works out great. A lot of things also, if you're buying a practice and you're or opening a practice, the architectural work has to be really, really designed properly for the pre-testing. You can't just say, well, we'll do this. You have to really plan it out, and sometimes maybe consult people who've done it before, and optometric consultants really know what they're doing as far as that. That's what we used for our second office that we moved to, and it really worked out well. Everything was in its place. The only thing is that you can't anticipate changes in technology where you might need a different type of space for something. We're not doing LASIK surgery here, but if we got that law in New Jersey, then hopefully we'd be able to, well, probably we do it in the surgical center anyway.
Sure. For sure, the future of optometry is not two-hand optometry anymore. It's four-hand with assistance, six-hand. You're going to be surrounding yourself with assistants that can use a lot of this ophthalmic equipment.
So Steve, you mentioned something before that I really have a question about, and the idea, and we see it on ODwire too, and it blows my mind, the idea that the docs themselves are actually doing the testing and pre-testing. When I think about and I look at a lot of this equipment, beyond the fact that it's incredibly expensive and you don't want to tie up your own time working with it, the manufacturers have gone to great pains to make the equipment easy to use
Right.
for assistance. So to me, it sort of blows my mind that you're still seeing people wanting to run everything themselves.
Absolutely. If I can delegate something, I'll delegate it because it gives me more time to spend with the patient, more time to see more patients, etc. So, and right now, I would venture to say that my staff is 10 times better at doing every test that we've mentioned and more than I am, because we were oriented, and I think that's always the case. I think they're even better putting scleral lenses in the eye. But absolutely, a well-trained staff, it's just like you don't want the doctor, the internist, to draw your blood. You want the phlebotomist who does 100 of them a day or 50 of them a day to draw your blood.
Yep.
Same thing here. If I had to work and do their job, I probably would be very poor at it. Plus, if they're a good technician, they're explaining what each test is and what the test is for. Some of them have a nominal fee that we have to charge because it's over and above the cost of regular examination, and they have the time to spend doing that. If I'm doing something that could be easily delegated, then I'm not going to be generating as much money, and I'm going to be rushing in the room doing the tests that I'm really there for, or doing the examination I'm really there for. So a good staff, luckily we have a mature staff, people who've been with me for many years, and it does work for us for at least one instrument that they get a stipend for the amount of tests that are done in each month, and it is a motivational factor. I think they would now, at this point, explain it the same way, but the extra income is certainly appreciated by the staff.
Sure.
Right. Well, just about we have, I'm sure there are going to be a load of questions based on your half hour together.
Well,
and you're on ODwire all of the time.
And you're going to get tomatoes lobbed at your head, too, because I mentioned the stuff about docs doing their own pre-testing, and I'm going to chop this up and do a little 2-minute piece so where we can post this so people can listen to it.
Yeah. So, Steve, keep looking, and you'll be answering questions.
We're talking about who might be in Texas, who might have... But some people like to have hands-on and do everything themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. And again, they're probably better at doing the testing than I am. But my job is to review and analyze results, not to get the results. So I'm the architect, and they're the construction worker.
I mean, Steve, I completely get it. I built a lot of the equipment that's around us to actually make the studio work. But I'm telling you, the second my son gets old enough to do all this stuff, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he
can take over.
He's already 9, so by next year.
I was going to say 9 years old, he could do it now.
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything better than 40-something.
God.
Okay, Steve.
I'll be trolling the convention. Like I said, that first lecture by Dr. Chaus, who we've had on CEWire, was just phenomenal, describing the angiography capabilities of the OCT. So I recommend everybody, if they don't see it now, to get back and see it on demand.
Excellent.
Yes.
All right, Steve. Well, thanks. And if anything comes up, any problems, let us know. We'll be here, and just type it into the chat window, and we'll catch up with you later.
I'll do that.
All right.
Have a nice day, guys. You always do a great job.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Okay, we just on time to learn more about diabetes.
We are.
Yes.
Let's see. Before we do that, let me just put up the specials again. So hopefully people are responding to what's going on out there, and you can take a look at kind of the specials that are going on. And again, I mentioned it before, I am fully aware that this stuff has long sales cycles, right? You don't necessarily make a decision about a piece of equipment that's going to cost you, 5 figures before you do it. It takes a long time, just like buying a car. But if you are planning on leaping anytime soon, feel free to log into the conference, log into the exhibit hall, and contact somebody at ZEISS.
Or if you've already seen the equipment
Yep.
and you're ready to buy it, now's your chance to get it at a discount.
Yep, absolutely. So they didn't have to carry the equipment; they want to give it to you for less.
They'll be happy to,
that is
to
the
close
bottom
the
line.
sale right today.
So who was next? Was Dr. Chouse gonna?
So,
Okay, let me. This is not Chouse.
after yours, here you go.
Do I not get one? I don't get one. Okay, let me. Do you have his phone? Oh, his phone number's there. Okay. Excellent. Okay, so let me get him going here. Dr. Chouse.
Yeah, he's just fresh off the presentation. So for those of you that attended the first hour, you learned a lot about glaucoma. Now's your chance to get some more inside information from one of the speakers. And he'll be supplying a lot of material. He's one of
Okay.
the nationally known experts
He
on
is.
glaucoma.
He is. Diabetes is his shtick, and boy, he knows a lot. And
I said glaucoma, I meant
you
diabetes.
and diabetes. Okay, ready? Here we go. Fingers crossed.
Hello.
Hey, Paul, it's Adam and Paul Farkas. How you doing?
Hi. Do you still have
Well,
jet
how are you
lag?
gentlemen
You
doing?
just got back from Hawaii yesterday, right?
I did. I got back from Hawaii on Wednesday night, so I'm still kind of like in this. You know how you get back from vacation and it's like, why did I take a vacation? Now I've got way more stress in my life before.
Yes,
Exactly.
I just came back from Spain, and so that's why I look the way I do. And I just wanted to leave. I'm like, I can't do this. This is just too hard.
Was it a 9-hour
I just
time
figured
zone?
out-
Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I
God.
just figured out how to get into the lounge. I was like searching around. How do I get to? So I'm in the lounge now. April is taking questions from people about which technology to buy.
Oh, cool.
And I can try to. When you told me I was doing two things at once, like my head exploded because I can barely do one thing.
Well, I thought it would be fun to have you here while you were answering questions so people could see. So Paul, you are a national expert on diabetes, and I know that I helped you record the lecture for this one, and I have to say, your part of the lecture was probably the most scared I have ever been looking at those statistics. It made me not want to eat anything ever again.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that's what you're left with is, right, what can I eat?
Yeah.
You're kind of left with styrofoam as being the only food that won't hurt you. Right?
Yeah. Oh my God. If everybody out there, if you haven't listened to Paul's lecture, you really should. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a copy of that lecture and I'm going to put it up on our live stream, snippets of it during the day today when we need a break, because I think it's that important for people to see it, even if they're not logged into the conference.
Were there a lot of questions, Paul, from based on your presentation?
So, a few. There were a few questions. I got a couple of questions about artificial intelligence applications, which obviously is a whole nother topic unto itself, but it does, tie in with the whole notion of using better technology to help us, identify, diagnose things earlier. So that was the question that I received. A lot of comments just about great presentation. So those were good to see. The questions coming in now are, and this is one that April just answered, is, which technology should I invest in first? Getting an ultra wide field camera or getting OCT angiography? And that's, they both do totally different things. It's a tough question. I think for the average optometrist, I think ultra wide field is probably going to be more beneficial. That's my sense. I don't know if everybody would agree with that, but because it has applications in a host of ophthalmic conditions. In terms of making you sleep better at night, knowing you got a great view, of the retinal periphery,
Right.
you didn't miss something that's going to end up, causing you nightmares in the future. So that's my sense about it, right now.
Right. So I guess why don't we step back and talk a little bit about diabetes and pre-diabetes?
what are
And
the-
I mentioned before not being able to eat anything, but what's really at the heart of this? What's going on? And
the underlying causes of diabetes and pre-diabetes.
So
I'm always getting tested.
I mean,
I'm a pre-diabetic. So I make sure I diet before I see the physician.
No, exactly. It's like flossing the night before you go to the dentist,
Right.
right? You try to eat well a few days before. It's like 85% of people over age 65 in the U.S. have pre-diabetes. The number's astounding. So, what's at the heart of all of this? The reality is that it's a complex interaction between nature and nurture. So there's definitely environmental causes that individuals have control over. Sedentary lifestyle, eating too many calories in the diet, too much highly refined carbohydrate. That's my view, is that that's a major factor leading to both the pre-diabetes and diabetes epidemics. But in the environment we have set up for our lives in our country, and probably most industrialized countries, we're spending long hours sitting in the car going to work. We're not as active. We're not moving around. We're not, most of us aren't able to walk to work, for instance. And there are other environmental factors that individuals don't have control over that actually contribute significantly to type 2 diabetes, the most common form. And one of them, I'll just highlight now, is air pollution. So the World Health Organization has a study out now that shows that if there's a high amount of particulate air pollution, so small particles, this comes from gasoline engines and diesel engines, these small particulate air pollution particles activate our immune systems in such a way that we become less sensitive to the effects of insulin. So the World Health Organization, their latest report said that worldwide, 16%, what is that, about 1 in 6 cases of new diabetes are directly attributable to air pollution levels. And so that's something that, as an individual, you don't have as much control over. I guess you could move out, to the middle of the wilderness and try to, get away from particulate air pollution, but that's not, that's not something that's easy to do. So I think there's a whole notion here is that there's a constellation of factors in the environment in our homes that we've created in terms of, not eating well, not getting enough exercise. But also, I think we have these social factors, including air pollution, including our commerce is set up in such a way that we have to spend often, long hours in an automobile, not actually moving around, long hours sitting at a desk, not moving around. The new joke now is that sitting is the new smoking, right? Many of us are sitting in chairs hours on end, and we're not moving around. So probably just getting up off your rear end and moving around your office space, will play a part in helping lower the odds of somebody converting to prediabetes and ultimately to diabetes.
So the takeaway is, if the air is clear and you keep moving around, you can go to the Cheesecake Factory with no guilt?
No doubt, no. And so it's a confluence of these factors, right? So my general advice to my patients is eat less refined carbohydrate. And the simple way to say it is eat less white food, right? Rice, potatoes, breads, pasta, particularly in the United States, they have highly refined carbohydrates. We know stress out the pancreas. They make you produce more insulin in order to keep blood sugars normalized. It's interesting. Some new research was looking at ketogenic diets, super high fat diets, like 90% fat, maybe 8% protein, 2% carbohydrate. That when you eat a diet like that, and I'm not doing it myself, but if you eat a diet like that, the pancreas, and this is in normal individuals without diabetes yet, the pancreas needs to make about 1/10 as much insulin if you're on one of these ketogenic type diets. And so there probably is some merit in eating healthy fats. Now, probably the Cheesecake Factory is not the healthiest, fat way to go about consuming fats, but certainly avocados, olive oil, macadamia nut oil particularly seems to be very healthy according to a number of studies. I think that's going to be beneficial if we move away from the refined carbohydrate. I think we were led astray by, these dietary recommendations of the last 50 years. Until the last 10 years, they were in effect, to eat, 60% of calories from carbohydrate. I think that's too much, especially in somebody that has prediabetes. You're going to almost certainly convert to diabetes if the predominant component of your diet is refined carbohydrates.
Right. And today's conference is, of course, is all about ZEISS and their instrumentation and all the new tech that they're bringing out. And as a result of this tech, you can actually detect diabetic retinopathy early, well before people are actually having any real, symptoms. What does that mean to you clinically, being able to actually suss that out before the patient even realizes something's wrong?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, early detection, the hypothesis here is that if you detect somebody with retinopathy earlier, you can intervene earlier, right? So it's not always the case, but I think in general, if you can tell a patient, I had 5 patients in this exact scenario yesterday who had microaneurysm formation. The previous year that I saw them, they had none. And so now they do. Now the horse is out of the barn. So what are we going to do? How are we going to prevent this from getting worse? And that's, I think, when you have a picture, it's worth 1,000 words. You can really help the patient to understand, look, these are the changes, and I can show the patient on the screen using OCTA or using ultra-wide field imaging or even conventional retinal imaging that, look, you've got a problem. We want to prevent this from getting worse. We need to get serious about keeping your blood glucose levels, your blood pressure levels, your lipids and the like, as well controlled as possible. And then I have a whole litany of things I kind of go through with, more than just keep your A1C, under 7, or the American Academy of Family Physicians now says nobody should have an A1C under 8. There should be no requirement to do that. So I take exception to that both as an eye doctor and as a patient, because we know if your A1C is, above 7%, the risk of developing retinopathy goes way up at an exponential level. So, one way to solve the diabetes problem is by saying, okay, well, the blood glucose criteria for having diabetes, we're just going to jack those up. It used to be that way. The diagnosis of diabetes was a blood sugar level above 140. And then when it was reduced to 126 fasting blood glucose, suddenly you had another 1 million or 2 million Americans that suddenly were in the category of having diabetes. But, and I say that facetiously, but and I think that's what the American Academy of Family Practice has done, is they're kind of trying to let physicians, to some extent, off the hook by, saying, okay, it's acceptable to have an A1C of 8 for most patients. I don't agree with that. I think individualizing goals is still the way to go. I digressed way off of your point, but, the whole importance of early detection of diabetic retinopathy is that often you're going to find patients that don't know they have diabetes. You can get them referred in for appropriate treatment. And if they do know they have diabetes, you can have the conversation about tightening up their metabolic control. My specific criteria for patients now is to not only get your A1C under 7, but to try to keep your blood glucoses, when they get high, to get them back into the normal range as rapidly as possible. There's a huge push now in the basic research level of diabetic retinopathy, because the evidence is showing that if your blood glucose levels remain above about 180, that's when the retina gets damaged. But if the blood glucose levels are above 180 for more than about 6 hours, even when the blood glucose returns to normal, so you can do this with a glucose insulin clamp, where the patient gets IV glucose, IV insulin, you immediately bring the glucose down into the normal range. You make it 90 again. But if the blood glucose stays above 180 for 6 hours or longer, for the next 6 weeks, there's massive production of free radicals in the retina that continues to cause damage. So it's an A1C. You got to remember what it is. It's just an average. So one of the other metrics that I'm really focusing on with my patients is not letting your blood glucose remain elevated for too long. Because you can have blood sugars ranging from 400 to 40 and still have a good A1C. Right. It's just an average. An average is not reflecting, what's really going on at the granular level.
Right. Just a practical question. When you find this, do you refer them back to the primary care physician? And does the primary care physician listen to you?
The truth is, more often than not, no. And I'm sad to say, and I work my tail off to try to communicate my recommendations to the PCP, and not only about, patient needs better metabolic control, but about specific therapeutic options for patients. For instance, we know sulfonylurea drugs increase the risk of dying from stroke and heart attack. And most endocrinologists don't use them in patients that have any history of cardiovascular disease. But the PCPs, the average PCP, is still using to a greater extent than I would like to see sulfonylurea drugs. Why? Because they lower the blood glucose. They're looking for a target. They're looking for a better A1C, and they're cheap, right? So you're treating the blood glucose, but you're not treating the patient when you do that. So, how do you get the physician to listen? So this is kind of my mantra about this. I send the letter to the PCP. I tell the patient, your control's not optimal now. I want to see you back in whatever time, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, depending on their level of diabetic retinopathy. And then I look again at their metabolic panel because I have access to their, to all their lab work. And if the PCP hasn't made any changes to improve my patient's metabolic status, I'm telling the patient, frankly, I think you might be better served by getting an endocrinology consultation. And if you love your PCP, that's great. The endocrinologist and your primary care doc can work together. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, often I'll just tell a patient, I think you'd be better served by seeking out another healthcare provider. I try not to do that. Try to work with the PCP as much as possible. Many of them now, because they know I'm the guy, I'm kind of the irritant in my town because I'm sending them letters every year saying, your patient's A1C is still out of control. They're still on the, not on the optimal medication, given their current cardiovascular status. And I don't say, patient, you're doing a bad job. I say, I've suggested the patient discuss this with you. And oftentimes, docs will see this 2-3 years in a row, and either they tell the patient, don't come back to Dr. Chouse, he's bugging the hell out of me, or they say, I better look into this. One thing I'll tell you, I've gotten a much better response from cardiologists about some of my treatment recommendations than I have from the primary care physician. Because the cardiologists are really in tune with some of these new medications that lower the risk of dying from diabetes. And that's the key thing here. Most patients actually don't go blind from diabetes, but the majority do die from cardiovascular causes, and they die prematurely. So, and that's my focus in my practice, is to try to not only use the eye as a hook to get the primary care physician's attention, but then also talk about the link between diabetic retinopathy and increased cardiovascular risk. Because that, if you see a single microaneurysm in a patient's eye, the risk of dying from a stroke or a heart attack is about 30% higher. Once you get to severe non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, the risk is 4 to 5 times higher of a cardiovascular mortality within the next 5 to 10 years.
So
I'm sorry, you're not just seeing this stuff in the eye. It's happening everywhere in the body. Forgive me. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So when the picture is worth 1,000 words, do you transfer over the retinal findings to whoever you're referring to?
I am doing that now. Yeah, I'm doing that now. So we use a system called Epic where my practice is, and so I'm able to upload images and send those to the PCP and say, look, here's the problem that we're seeing, and oftentimes, I get the response back. Well, so what? Is tightening the blood glucose going to make that big of a difference? And send them into a retinal specialist if they need treatment. I understand the primary care physicians, concern. One concern is that if you drive people's blood sugar too low with insulin, for instance, you increase rates of hypoglycemia. And hypoglycemia can really cause problems for people. It can ruin your quality of life. And so, it's a constant juggling act for PCPs trying to figure out, what do I focus on? What do I attack? And how aggressive do I go after it? As a patient, I want the best possible metabolic control I can get. And I think having a retinal image in the PCP's hands will help inform their decisions about how tightly patients should be controlled in terms not only of their blood glucose, but also their blood pressure and their blood lipids.
Right. So I guess, just sort of to close out, I have one question to try to end on a positive note. But let's just say that you're the average OD. You now have an ultra wide field camera. All of a sudden you're seeing microaneurysms in a patient, right? And you're not a diabetes specialist. This is, you have this finding now. what should the average OD do to not feel completely hopeless about what they've just discovered? Knowing that they're not an expert, that they, and it's really hard to get anyone to keep their sugar under control. What should they do, and how should they, maybe not feel so hopeless about getting the patient the treatment they need?
Yeah, and you're talking about, my words to my colleagues in optometry in terms of not being hopeless about it. Not the patient,
Yeah.
but more the eye care provider.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I point back to the seminal studies which show, if you can lower your A1C, it's not the best metric in my view, but it's the one that's established and most widely understood. If you can lower your A1C 10%, the risk of your diabetic retinopathy progressing on to a more severe level is cut by 40%. So in fact, you get a pretty good bang for your buck by lowering the blood glucose a little lower. Now, if somebody's coming in with an A1C of 6%, and they're still getting diabetic retinopathy and progression, that's when I start to feel a little bit more hopeless. One thing that I think optometrists need to realize now is that these anti-VEGF drugs are being shown in study after study to actually reverse the progression of diabetic retinopathy. So even before somebody has diabetic macular edema that needs an Avastin injection or Lucentis or Eylea, if they have some degree of diabetic retinopathy, if you give that patient an anti-VEGF injection, you can actually cause regression of their diabetic retinopathy. It not only stabilizes, it gets better in a majority of patients. And I think that that's a big message, is that ODs need to think about referring patients in sooner than we otherwise might have, because treatment can be started earlier than it was even 5 years ago now, because we have the evidence that it lowers the risk of diabetic retinopathy progression.
Excellent. Now, I think
So don't be hopeless.
Yeah, because I think one thing that we've heard over and over again is people do feel a little bit hopeless, like they can't do anything about this, and it's like a tidal wave. But I think that's a really good point, that something actually can be done now, at least a bit more so than in the past.
So one question I have, which is a little more practical, if the optometrist invests big bucks in this very expensive equipment, does it help him in his practices building up a specialty practice? Do you deal more with endocrinologists, for example, being a diabetes expert? Do you get more patients in from them and have a better relationship because you have this equipment?
Yes, is the bottom line. Because in every consult letter that I send and every image that I send, I'm explaining what's in the image, because a lot of primary care physicians, they can see blood in the eye just like anybody can. They can see microaneurysms. But if you explain the significance of it, the severity of it, with an OCT angiography, test, you can show, look, this is something that you can't see with normal clinical examination techniques. We uncovered, enlargement of the foveal avascular zone. Well, that's been linked, as it turns out, to vision loss. And about 8% of people that have capillary zone dropout have loss of visual acuity. And I think it's really very beneficial to let the docs that you work with know that you have the technology available in your practice, that you're on the leading edge as a practitioner, and you want to help them do the best possible job so that patients get good outcomes, so your HEDIS scores look good, so your patients end up, keeping their toes, keeping their kidneys, and keeping their vision, as well as staying alive. So what I did when I first started the diabetes specialty practice, my own endocrinologist said, you're really interested in diabetes. I know that. If you move to my office, nearby my office, I moved eventually across the street from this big endocrine practice. He said, I'll send you every patient with diabetes, because I know you're on top of it. You're more passionate about it than any ophthalmologist or optometrist with whom I've worked before. So if you reach out, and this is what I did, I sent letters to every primary care doc in my community and said, look, I have a practice emphasizing diabetes care and education. I can help you do a better job with your patients. Most physicians blew it off, didn't return, a call or an email. But I got about maybe a 5% hit rate. Family docs in town, and you don't need every doc in town to like you or think you're great. If you get a few endocrinologists, a few cardiologists, suddenly your practice grows exponentially. And that's what happened. I went from having maybe 500 patients with diabetes in my practice on year one. At year 5, I had more than 4,000 patients with diabetes coming in to see me regularly. So you can really grow a practice around diabetes. It's every other patient has either diabetes or pre-diabetes. So I think there is some merit. Just like dry eye, it's a practice growth driver. You can help patients you can help their physicians, you can grow your practice.
So the takeaway from this, from now we've heard it from two practitioners, is we have to quote the field of dreams: build and they will come. You have to have the equipment, and then you can start building that practice that optometrists say, no, impossible, I can't have a medical practice. It's just not so. Art,
You
would
can
you say?
build it. And I'm sympathetic, though, Dr. Farkas, to this notion that, gee, can I spend $60,000 or $70,000 or whatever on this new technology? Can I make the payment? And I think eventually, if you build it, they will come, especially if you let your patients and everybody they know and every physician in town know that you've got this technology.
Right.
Yep. All right. Well, that is I think a great note to end
Paul,
on.
it was a
Paul,
wonderful half hour.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. This has been great, and we're going to post up these interviews on ODwire later, since not too many people show up on weekends here to listen to us chatter, but they will on the site. So maybe we can
They
put
may
it up
have
there.
questions for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll have questions, and if they do, I'll pass them on to you, and maybe we can keep the conversation going there.
Thanks so much for your
Absolutely.
time.
It's been an honor to talk to both of you. Thank you for your time. Thanks for all you do to make our profession better.
Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.
And get some sleep.
Okay, thanks so much.
Catch
Have
you
a
later.
good one.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
All righty.
Okay, well, that was very interesting.
Yeah. So I told you. Now, do you feel scared?
Inspirational,
Are you scared? Are you going to change your behavior?
Nah. Listen, you reach a certain age.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting.
What's gonna happen?
When I was in, I just came back from my vacation. I was in Paris and then in rural Spain, and we ate like absolute animals. I mean, just ham and chorizo for breakfast every day.
First Paris.
And then but the thing is, I actually lost weight going there because I was walking constantly every day.
Right.
I mean, 8, 9, 10 miles a day, walking and actually being active.
So,
And, we were eating a lot of high-fat foods and a lot of high-protein foods, but at the same time, we were walking around a lot as well and being active. So I think there's some merit to this idea that these desks are killing all of us.
yeah, absolutely. So, well, my goodness, we had two very clinical, this has been a clinical hour.
Yeah, so let me...
We're going to move into some more basic stuff about the instruments.
Yeah, so let me actually pull up so we can just look at the schedule here since, there we go.
We're going to be getting people for the next hour that actually are on the staff of ZEISS.
Yeah, so we're going to hear more about what's going on with ZEISS. So meanwhile, the lectures that have been going on all day today, obviously we just had Paul's lecture with Aaron in April, and Dr. Lederer gave his macular OCT interpretation talk. I think that's still going on right now. And then still to come today is the talk all about the ultra-wide field instrument as well, which is going to be a cool one, I'm sure, with some great pictures too. But yeah, so we're going to be talking to some folks from ZEISS about the particular instruments.
So why don't you call Keith Brock? It's just about time.
And before I call Keith, let me get all this together here.
That's Keith.
Okay, so Keith is the product manager for Claris for the ultra-wide field instrument. So let me see if I can get him on the line and we can talk a little bit about it. I mean, we've heard so much about the instrument this morning. Let me pull him up here. And actually, I'll pull up a picture of the Claris while we're at it, since everyone loves to see it. There it is. Footprint's smaller than you might imagine.
Yeah, it's small, right?
So yeah,
not much bigger than the slit line.
because you've seen these other ultra wide field devices and they are big, but the tech is just getting smaller and smaller, and it's kind of crazy. So let me see if I can find Keith. Hang on for 1 second. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a big decision for many of you to make that decision to buy this expensive equipment. But just visit the very successful ODs that have a medical practice and see their office set up.
Here's the thing, though, and I'm going to say this before I dial Keith and call in. I think you need a plan. I don't think you can just have the instrument. I mean, it's not like Field of Dreams where the ghost showed up because he built the ball field. I think you need to actually have a
Go
plan.
out and let the world know.
You need to have a plan, a marketing plan in place even before you purchase that instrument. What are you going to do with it? And what is that marketing plan going to be? Whether it's like Paul going out and reaching out to the endocrinologist in his area, which is a brilliant idea. But you need to do something. I don't think people will just necessarily,
Right.
show up. So that's my 2 cents. I don't know. Okay, let me get this sorted.
And you'd be amazed how physicians are happy to refer, because sometimes they want the patients out of their life for a while with someone else to take the heat. So given a choice, I remember when I used to work with retinologists and there was no hope for them, they would just send them to us and see what you can do to make them see with contact lenses. So that took a little heat off of them for a while.
Oh boy. Okay, here we go. I'm going to call Keith here.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey Keith, it's Adam and Paul Farkas. How you doing?
How you doing, Keith?
Hey guys, how are you? I'm good.
Okay, we've had a lot of great clinical information from two optometrists, and now we got to get down to the nuts and bolts and practice from you. So,
So Keith, we've been talking a lot this morning about Claris in a variety of contexts. We just got off the phone with Paul Chouse,
Right.
talking all about it, and everyone seems really excited. We talked to Steve Silberberg earlier in the day, talking about how he's probably going to go ahead and purchase the unit as well to replace his existing one as his lease ends. He has a different brand. So I guess one thing that struck me, Paul and I were sitting here right now just looking, and up on the screen I put up a picture of the Claris itself. We're struck by how small it is. So I think there's definitely been a generational change here
Sure.
in the instruments.
can you describe that next generation, that ultra wide field, and how has Claris changed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we talk a lot about, how it's the next generation in ultra wide field. And I think there's a lot to be said for the generation that came before the Claris, and how it really taught us a lot about the value of imaging in the far periphery. The Claris is looking to leverage that legacy and take it one step further and kind of address some of the shortcomings of the previous generation of ultra wide field cameras, and that's namely the color, the clarity, and the patient comfort. So with this Claris 500, we're now capturing lid and lash free, something that plagued the legacy devices, ultra wide field images in true color, natural coloration, high resolution, the same resolution that you would expect to get from a traditional narrow field white light camera, without the need to drive, the patient's face into the optical architecture.
Right.
Rather, we're going to be bringing the architecture to the patient's eye.
Right, and you can see up on the screen right now we have some images from your brochure. You have one that's called True Color, and so what does that actually mean, true color?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think there's that we get that question quite a lot from our customers and our sales team. It is getting this question quite a lot in the field, because a lot of devices do claim to have color imaging. And I think one thing to think about when you're talking about color imaging is that image should look the same as whenever you look through your slit lamp or your BIO or your ophthalmoscope. The coloration in your image should match what you see under direct observation. Obviously, that direct observation is using white light to illuminate the retina. We're doing the same thing, slightly different, but we're doing the same thing with the Claris. We're actually illuminating the retina using a broad spectrum of the visible light spectrum, spanning over 200 wavelengths. In contrast, there are scanning laser ophthalmoscopes, and scanning laser ophthalmoscopes, they're great. They generate these really high contrast images. They're very valuable in angiography, but they're using monochromatic laser light, right? Monochromatic laser light is a single wavelength of light. Many of these devices incorporate 2 or 3 lasers, but that's again 2 or 3 wavelengths of the wavelengths that compose the visible light spectrum, right? So each of these wavelengths are going to be absorbed or reflected based on the structures that they encounter as they interact with the retina. And so you need that broad spectrum of wavelengths interacting with the retina in order to generate what we call a true color image.
So with resolution and image clarity, what makes Claris stand out as compared to the other ultra-wide field technologies?
Well, in short, it's the ZEISS optics, right? I'm sure you guys are aware, and the world is aware that ZEISS has been delivering superior optics in all walks of life for many, many years, hundreds of years. And image quality is just something that ZEISS is never going to compromise on. And that was really the challenge that we put forward to the engineering team was, maintain the ZEISS color and clarity in the image, and then drive that field of view as wide as possible. So the 500, Claris 500, really delivered against that goal. It maintains the resolution made famous by our VisuCam and SF450, white light traditional fundus camera products. We got to that 7 micron optical resolution with this device, and for reference, that's the nearest competitor in the ultra wide field space is providing 14 micron resolution at best. That's their best resolution, and that's essentially half the resolving power of the Claris. So when we're talking about small microaneurysms, being early indicators of diabetic retinopathy or other indicators of disease, that resolution is really going to provide additional confidence that you're seeing and documenting everything that you need to with your fundus imaging system.
Right, and in fact, we have photos up again right now, detailing just how high resolution this actually is, and you can really see everything. It's kind of some amazing shots here. It would be good wallpaper actually for Windows.
Now, there's one question that some optometrists worldwide might be asking, and we do have a worldwide audience watching today. I assume that the instruments require dilation for optimum use?
This device actually is non-mydriatic. We have 2 capture modes. We have a mydriatic and a non-mydriatic capture mode. The non-mid capture mode captures these beautiful images down to 2.5 millimeter pupil. And then the mydriatic mode, I believe, is 3.5 millimeters is the ideal, which actually some non-mid cameras or some cameras claim to be non-mid because they capture down to 3.5 millimeters, strangely enough. But this works just as well non-mid as mydriatic.
So that's very important for those overseas optometrists that can't use diagnostic drugs as yet, that this instrument will work even though the eye is not dilated. That's very important information.
Absolutely.
That is not. No one makes a fuss over that, but it's important.
Right. And
I think it's important for. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think it's important even here in the U.S. Dilation is not something that a lot of for whatever reason isn't routinely done in many places. Sometimes you can't, and so having an instrument that works well, not dilated,
and major competition to the ones that advertise that you don't need dilation.
Right.
Okay, so
look, Doctors Adam and Paul, I am that patient that shows up and says, I got to go back to work, in 20 minutes,
right.
And I can't be dilated. I'm usually returning to the same clinician who didn't find any disease before, and so I pay the extra money to get my ultra wide field image in non-mydriatic capture.
Absolutely.
So that's.
So one interesting thing here I'm noticing too, I just pulled up the picture again of the actual instrument itself. In the older generation ultra wide field, even as a patient, I can tell you this, it was not the most comfortable thing in the world to use. You'd jam your face into the thing, you'd roll your face around to try to center everything properly. You'd still end up getting your eyelashes in the picture. At least I would 9 times
Right.
out of 10. So I know that you mentioned that this new device, the Claris 500, has ways around this. So can you speak to the comfort and how it's a little bit different from the older devices that way?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. So, I've also been imaged on the previous generation ultra wide field devices where the optics are fixed in space, and the technician and the patient have to work together to drive that patient's eye to that virtual point in the system in order to get a good image. And even when in the right position, more often than not, that image is obstructed in a large part by lid and lash. So it's a very challenging patient interface. And we talked to a lot of technicians, we talked to a lot of patients who had experience with the previous generation ultra wide field platform. And really no one was happy with that interface on either side of the camera, right? Technicians don't like to grab a hold of patients' heads and neck as much as patients don't like to be handled. So it was really, we really wanted to create a simple, stable patient interface that really takes, the operation of the device, puts it back in the hands of the operator, allows the patient to be a passive participant in the imaging process. This really minimizes the amount of variability between patients. So on that legacy device, you'd have if you had a young, highly compliant patient that could understand, how to position themselves using a color changing LED, it's a workhorse. But as soon as you get, your mother-in-law in the camera who maybe doesn't play video games, suddenly your workflow is really compromised, and the images are also compromised. And so with this device, with this simple interface, by bringing the optics to the patient's eye, in a stable, stationary position, we really remove all of that variability between technicians and between patients with this interface.
Right.
Oh, that's amazing. So is there anything else you want to say that you haven't said about the ultra wide field imaging? Anything unique about Claris?
Right. I do think that there's a couple of more subtle design aspects to the product that I would like to highlight. I'm happy to stick around in the lounge after our call to answer any additional follow-up questions. But I do want to highlight what we call the Live IR preview. And what this is doing is giving you video frame rate capture in infrared of the fundus as you're aligning and capturing the image. Okay. So you're going to see whether or not you have the right alignment. You're going to see if the patient is gazing in the appropriate direction. You're going to see if that region of interest is actually, enclosed by the image envelope, as it were. You're going to see if there's lid and lash, and you're able to intervene. There's, the patient isn't pressed up against the device. You can actually do a proper lid lift with this instrument if need be. And you do all that before you expose the patient to visible light. So before you sweep your optics through the patient's eye, you see that you are properly aligned and that the image that you capture is going to be a valuable image. And so what this does is it really cuts down on the number of recaptures required to get good images from this device.
Wow.
And so in terms of your workflow, if you're just capturing, if every time you press the capture button, you walk away with usable retina, usable content in your image, that's really going to help make your workflows more consistent and be more efficient.
About how long does it take for the average well-trained technician to do both eyes?
To do both eyes and ultra-wide field, we've been doing these workflow studies since the launch about 8 months ago, and both eyes and ultra-wide field is going to be captured in about maybe 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes.
Jeez. Wow, that's great. So you can schedule a patient less than every 15 minutes to use the equipment. So if you have a very active practice with several doctors working, you only need one of these, and you can line up patients to do it every 10 to 15 minutes with no problem.
Well, you can buy as many of them as you like, but yes, absolutely. I think
one will do for a practice.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, is that whenever you're scheduling, you're really trying to load up your schedule each day and get through that schedule. And usually, if the average OD's day is anything like mine, by 10:30, you're now running behind, right? And with this device, because it is so consistent, from one patient to the next, you're going to really be able to drive that schedule and stay on schedule throughout your day.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, and the important takeaway here is it's a pricey piece of equipment that a multi-group practice should have. There's no question that it would be a useful addition, and if you can have several doctors working with patients simultaneously and just have these patients lined up for this one bit of equipment, it's going to more than pay for itself. That's my
so
feeling.
In terms of return on investment, I think this is the most versatile fundus camera on the market. It does just as well at imaging in the far periphery, doing disease discovery, wellness screening, these types of programs, as it does documenting the optic nerve head and looking for signs of glaucoma or macular disease, very subtle signs of AMD or microaneurysms. It's the versatility of the product is actually one of its primary strengths. One thing we haven't even mentioned, and it's a whole additional topic, is external eye imaging. Right? With this device, you can actually take a picture of the front of the eye, the front of the eye and surrounding adnexa, and that is an additional reimbursement that is possible with this device that wasn't possible on the previous generation ultra wide field system.
Good point. Absolutely.
Very neat.
So you're available at the booth and to have conversations with people that want to talk turkey about purchase?
You bet. So I'm a product manager. I love to talk to them about the technology, geek out with anyone about how the images are captured and assembled. We'll get the sales team to talk turkey about pricing and those topics. But I'd love to really get into the weeds on how this system works if anyone's interested.
As far as shipping overseas, any problem?
Shipping overseas?
Well, yeah.
No,
For example,
sir.
we had someone call in before to see if we were alive, and we got the message from Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
wow.
basically,
So
we're having an international audience. That's the point. So that's the reason for the question.
So this is a lens-based system. I think it's an important question because it's not just the purchase price that you pay whenever you acquire a system like this. It's that price that you pay in service contracts and issues on the device for the life of the product. Right? It's the laser going down or the the power supply losing its functionality. These are important questions about what is it actually going to cost me to own this thing for the next 5 years. And so this system is a lens-based system, as opposed to the previous generation product is a mirror-based system. It's an enclosed optical pathway. So in terms of dust ingress, lids and lashes landing on the optics, that is not an issue with this product. The previous generation, elegant design from a research standpoint, but in practical use, having your optics open to the environment, open to dust ingress, open to lid and lash or whatever might land on that ellipsoidal mirror, and then having your technicians regularly having to clean that expensive and sensitive optic, it causes issues in shipping, in maintenance, and replacement of parts. So that's something that we wanted to move away from with this device as well.
And you have vendors internationally and for the sales and follow up?
Absolutely. So ZEISS is as global an organization as I think there exists today, and I'm sure that they are going to be able to find their local representative or distribution partner to gain access to all that ZEISS has to offer.
Great. All right. Well, Keith, thanks so much for this, and
A wealth of knowledge.
I'm sure the conversation will continue inside the the little chat area, and we're going to post this up on ODwire as well. So in the coming weeks, hopefully people will follow up with questions.
And you'll be available to answer questions after the show is over. Your booth will be up
Yes, sir.
for a month.
It'll be
So
sitting
they
there,
have
so
to reach you.
so people will be watching. They'll be entering the booth for at least the next month. So I'm sure there'll be more questions, and we'll forward them on to you no matter what.
Really excited to answer those questions, and just want to extend a quick thank you to both of you for the job that you're doing and helping us promote these technologies, and for the rest of the marketing team who pulled this together. I think it's a really exciting way to reach out to customers and talk to people about our technologies.
Yeah, and it's definitely something. It's something different. It's something fun. So yeah, I hope it's been a good experience for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for
All
your
right,
time,
I'll talk
Keith.
to you guys soon.
All right, thanks, Keith.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Okay, did we learn stuff?
We did.
Oh, look what we have.
Oh my gosh, is that for?
This is diabetes. We just had a thing on
Okay,
diabetes.
so we just had a talk on diabetes, and
And
so my production
Reed, come
assistant
on
here
in, say
delivers
hello. He's
delivers
our
us.
director.
These are oatmeal chocolate chip raisin
He just
cookies.
brought-
These are little Orbits donuts. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed.
He doesn't really. He really doesn't need
I
those.
really don't need it, but it's here.
We have oatmeal cookies
Ooh.
as well there, so.
Oh, look at those.
See you later. Alrighty. Well, now we have energy. I don't have diabetes, so yet. All right. So before we go on to our final interview of the day is going to be with Jessica from ZEISS, all about Cirrus. But before we do that, let me just run through one more time for folks what's going on.
And also, let's review Cirrus before she starts talking.
Before we do that, I'm going to stuff my face with this cookie.
Yeah,
So.
okay.
Alrighty, so let me pull up. Okay, so Cirrus, of course, is the line of OCT units made by ZEISS. That's their brand name. And it covers a wide variety of devices, including the Cirrus with angioplex. So again, that's to do OCT angiography, which is something that probably would have been considered science fiction 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
And let's see what else we have here. So the 5000, which is their sort of premier device that has all kinds of new software features, and we're going to talk to Jessica about that. The 500, which is their entry-level unit. Look at how small that is. So you can see small, very easy to use. This is maybe for the practice who is starting out and hasn't, had exposure to OCT before. This is probably a good unit to get started with. I'm going to take these away from you.
Oh, so good.
You do not need this. Okay. Dr. Chouse would be appalled if he saw what we had in front of us here. Anyway, so I'll call Jessica up and maybe get her on the line. I think it's about time.
Jessica's title is, what does she do? She works for ZEISS.
Yes, she's in charge of Cirrus. So,
And she's Medical Technology Business Group Product Manager. So she's the one that can answer all the questions.
yes, she is Keith's counterpart, essentially. So what he does for Clara, she does for Cirrus. And so let's talk to her all about this. Because the Cirrus brand of OCT has been around for quite a while, and they keep extending it with these newer products and changes to the software and stuff. And just like any other tech product, you got to keep up. So let's call her now.
This has got to be exciting for people just starting out in practice, trying to decide what to get.
I can only imagine the
First,
stress.
what you have to do is get a rich father-in-law.
Yeah.
That
But I mean, imagine in the olden days with your practice, you pick a chair and a stand, and the color what color the walls should be, and maybe if very basic stuff. Now you have real decisions to make about the technology you're going to be
and
using.
where to put it, and how
Where to put it, and
have the patient flow.
And of course, you're picking a platform. You're not just going with a piece of hardware, right? You have all these platform decisions that you have to make that you're going to be forced to live with for a very long time.
Right.
So these are not easy decisions. So I mean, on the one sense, it's very exciting to be able to do this. On the other hand, it's got to be terrifying.
And you have to hope the company, ZEISS, is putting these things into the schools to make the kids comfortable with these optometry students.
Well, sure.
Many of whom are watching now.
Yeah.
Are comfortable with this equipment.
Absolutely, yeah. And I honestly, I'm much more worried about the old guys than I am about the kids.
Well, the old guys.
I mean, please, these kids today, they're going to adapt to this. I mean, think about it. They don't really know a world without a lot of this technology. So. Okay, let me got that right. Okay, let me make sure I got this right. I'll take the picture of this down.
I think I was.
This is Jessica.
Hey, Jessica, it's Adam and Paul Farkas. How you doing?
Hi, Jessica.
Hi, great.
Okay.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon if you're somewhere on the East Coast.
No, we're on the West Coast, so this is morning.
Oh, okay. All right, same here.
Excellent. So I don't know if you've been following along at all with the conference this morning or been in the booths or anything like that?
Yes, I've been having a listen to you two and your previous guest, Keith, Dr. Chowson
Silberberg, yeah. So okay,
Yeah.
so you know what to
Yeah.
expect then. You're an old pro. So okay. Well, Jessica, we've been talking all about ZEISS and the devices this morning, and it seems like you're one of the folks in charge of the ZEISS line. And one thing that I didn't realize, I mean, the ZEISS brand has been around for quite a while now. I didn't realize how the brand has been extended into these different devices until I started doing research for the conference. So there's a lot to really chew on.
Sure. So what's new with ZEISS?
Right. So as you know, ZEISS is sort of, like you said, this instrument that's been around for a really long time. The ZEISS 5000 is a spectral domain technology, and it is a comprehensive diagnostic tool for the entire eye, for the whole eye. So not only are you seeing the central to the peripheral retina, but, and Paul, to the ONH, the optic nerve head.
There you go.
There you go. So yes, you can see from the central to the peripheral retina, and then also image the optic nerve head.
Right.
And as I said, the whole eye, we also have, of course, the anterior segment modules as well, that you can decide if that's something that you want to integrate in your practice as well. So it's really a diagnostic tool for the entire eye. And, our latest software it's just a really exciting time for ZEISS owners. We'll be releasing the latest software in the next few weeks here. And also for those who are considering adding OCT and especially OCTA in their practice. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about angiography, OCT angiography. Our latest software is really truly expanding utility of angioplex for the retina. So it's becoming more and more useful and a stronger tool to integrate into your practice for the retina and the optic nerve head. And then I'll also kind of speak about an additional anterior segment feature, which is very exciting that we have.
Right.
So specifically for the retina, we've recently launched or about to launch the Angioplex Montage. So that's basically, you had Keith on a little bit earlier, but ZEISS's answer to wide field OCT angiography is the Angioplex Montage. So that gives us a 14.4 by 14.4, or essentially 14 by 14 field of view, which is larger than a traditional 50-degree fundus camera, and up to 2 to 3 times larger than any other OCTA montages on the market. So we're really excited to have the Angioplex montage available for all of our practices. And you can really see more of the vasculature for any diseases affecting the central, and then now you can really see the peripheral retina by doing those montage.
Right. Now,
Exams.
help me out here and help out the old guy sitting next to me. So, I mean, because angiography, this is something, OCTA has become a really hot topic. It seems like overnight. You know, I know even here in Portland, next month there's going to be an entire conference just dedicated to this topic.
Right.
You know, and this is something that I think a lot of docs aren't really that familiar with. So with this Angioplex montage, is this something that, is it an additional software feature that's built into the OCT? How does this work?
Yeah, so it is a feature that is built into the OCT already. So if you choose to, it's modular. So you can decide whether or not, you know, if you're starting out and you really want to get comfortable with the OCT before taking on OCTA, your instrument is easily upgradable. So it is part of the software that can be turned on if you choose to, let's say, upgrade your OCT to OCTA. So it's very simple as far as upgrading or integrating it into the instrument.
Okay, got it. And so that's for the 5,000 and the 500? Can they both be upgraded, or just the 5,000?
Just the 5,000. So the
Got it.
500, as you were saying earlier, is more of the basic OCT. There's a few less features there. So eye tracking, I'll talk about. Hopefully, we'll be able to talk about that a little bit later. But that's offered on the 5,000. So there are a few differences, and that can be explained, you know, sort of later on in more detail. But the OCTA is only available on the 5,000.
Got it. Now, in terms of actually using it, you mentioned ease of use, because I think some people get a little scared that this is beyond their comprehension, and you know, this is going to take a lot more time, and it's difficult to train. Can you speak to you know, how hard or easy this is to actually set up and use?
Sure. As I said, as far as setup, it's really just an additional kind of flip of the switch where we you know, we can upgrade your software essentially if you already have the ZEISS. So as far as upgrading, really, really simple. And as far as ease of use, you know, ZEISS has been around for so long, and it's really known as this workhorse. And even as it continues to evolve, and you know, with the additional angiography, but it's still a highly rated ease of use amongst technicians and physicians. So when I think of ease of use, I think of about a couple of things. So first, is it easy to use as far as capturing and acquiring images, and is it efficient? I mean, how can I integrate this into my workflow, right? So we're very conscious of understanding that a physician really, doctor only has 7 minutes with a patient. I mean, can you attest to sort of that time range with the patients that you have?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the clinic, but yeah, you don't have a lot of time. Absolutely.
So about ease of use, is there anything more you wanted to talk about there?
Oh yeah, tons. But yeah, so we really you know, are really conscious of the valuable time spent with the patient. So things like for angiography, for example, we have a single scan to get angiography images, whereas there are other instruments in the market that require 2 scans in order to get 1 angiography image. So we only require a single scan. So it's essentially adding a single scan to your normal OCT workflow in order to get an angiography image. And yes, and this is the perfect time to talk about Fast Track. So this is an eye tracking technology that actively tracks the eye during scanning. So it helps to get rid of any potential for motion artifacts. And, you know, what's great about this is your patients can blink. So it's okay to blink during the OCT or OCTA capture. And there's other instruments on the market that have difficulty when patients blink. So what's kind of interesting is that it does track the eye during the acquisition. You can blink, and actually it helps to to wet the cornea so you can actually get better images when there is an occasional blink if needed. And then also we have a track to prior. So your scans are getting taken from the exact same location as the previous visit to ensure that visit to visit, precise comparison. So if you think about it, it's like when you program your seat and, your wife gets in your car, but then you have the second key, but it's like your programmed seat. So your chin rest moves back to the position of the past exam. And then it auto-registers those images together to account for any tilting of the head. So, using this eye tracking technology, being able to blink, and then also returning your patient back to the previous location of how they were set up the last time is really part of this ease of use and efficiency in getting the high quality images.
Right. I asked Keith.
Very, very quickly.
I asked Keith this question. I ask you as well. How long does it take to use this instrument used for both eyes for a well-trained technician?
Sure. Well, it really depends on what your workflow is. As I said, it takes, we have the whole eye that you could possibly image. So a matter of seconds to take an individual scan. So if you took a macular cube and let's say a 3x3 or a 6x6 angiography scan, you could take that in about a minute per eye. So a couple of minutes if, you really had your workflow and you knew what you wanted. So I don't know if that answers
So
your
basically
question.
it's less than 5 minutes per eye if you do the whole enchilada?
I would say you could do both two eyes in 5 minutes. If you did the whole enchilada, sure, you could take much longer. It just really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, because there are tons of different scans you could do. But for example, just as a practical workflow, you might take a macular cube, and you might even take an optic nerve cube just to have sort of that full picture. And then if you had patients that were that you really were interested in seeing the vasculature, then you could take perhaps a 6x6 angio scan. So then that would be sort of the whole enchilada at that point. And then if you wanted to zoom in, you could take a smaller 3x3. So so really you would probably start off with your OCT, and then if you needed to add an OCTA because you had a high-risk patient or somebody that you were concerned about their vasculature, then you could just add one additional scan to your patient workflow.
Right. And, one of the things that I've noticed, and we spoke with Keith about it too, is that a lot of the features that you seem to be developing are really there so you don't have to repeat a scan or repeat a picture, because that's where a lot of the time killing comes in. I mean, I remember with ultra wide field, you'd have to do it over and over again to get a decent shot. And now the tech is working with you to make it better. I mean, you look at, on Cirrus with fast track eye scanning, or, can watch out for your blinks, things like that. So, Paul, I think a lot of the time in the old days, these things would take a long time because you'd have to just do it over and over and over again. But being able to position the patient consistently, being able to have the computer actually look out for you and say, oh, this person's blinking, this makes a huge difference.
Yeah, so again, for a multi-OD practice, you could schedule these every 15 minutes without fear of a backup. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Sure.
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. So one other question I had for you, Jessica, I've been putting this up all day here on the screen, this PanoMap thing. I keep blowing by the slide over and over again. So what is this PanoMap analysis?
Yeah, so, it's interesting. We've had PanoMap for a while, but it's kind of come back up. It's kind of like it's new, and there's everybody's very interested in it. So I'll explain a little bit about what that is. So PanoMap is, I talked about it just a moment ago. It's essentially you're taking your Mac cube and your optic nerve head cube and stitching them together so you have a full overall assessment of the eye health. So PanoMap is often used for not only patient education, but expanding a physician's wellness program. So, wellness programs can often entail fundus imaging, even vitamins. And so this is already something that's built into your ZEISS if you have one today that is used for patient education. And it's a single page report, which is nice. It really kind of gives the full details of what's going on with the back of the eye. This is an OCT report. So, of course, if there was any concerns, you would then want to dive deeper with OCT angiography. And so it shows the RNFL and the ganglion cell interplexiform layer thickness, and also has a macular thickness. So it's kind of this whole eye health assessment report, which is great for expanding any type of wellness program. And since it's sort of an easy to understand report, it's great for patient education. And of course, what we're all making sure that our patients are compliant. And I know that you were talking a lot about, the picture is worth 1,000 words. And this is a good report to help educate your patients.
And a question I asked Keith, I'll ask you as well, since we have an international audience watching today. Is dilation necessary to use this equipment?
Dilation is not necessary. So we can image up to down to a 2 millimeter pupil successfully.
And it's available throughout the world as
yes,
far as getting shipments?
Worldwide. Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, and one final question.
Worldwide.
This, for people that have equipment, is the data compatibility, is it important that they can upgrade when necessary? It may be important to some practitioners.
Absolutely. And as we continue to evolve ZEISS and the ZEISS software, we always are making sure that the data is upgrade ready, if you will. So as we continue to innovate, scans that you're taking now, we're taking that raw data and we're able to analyze it, even at a later date with the latest and greatest. And I can't really speak to that in the U.S., but outside the U.S., we have some additional analyses that even today, with your current scans, they can be analyzed. And also, talking about data compatibility, unique to ZEISS is this environment that we have. It's what we call the integrated diagnostic imaging platform, which really combines, we were talking about Forum and Glaucoma Workplace and Retina Workplace, but it combines the fundus images from the Claris, the visual field information from the Humphrey, and, for the OCT structure and vascular information. So, in our ZEISS integrated environment, we were really not only having sort of data compatibility over generations of instruments, but also compatible together, using our workplaces and our Forum software.
Right. I've got a stupid question or ignorant question. I don't know. How do you actually upgrade the software on this thing? Is it like an iPhone? Do you just grab it over the internet and then it does its thing, or is it more involved than that?
Well, so all of our software is customer or self-installable. So essentially, we have a USB drive that you plug in, and you always want to make sure that you're backing up your data on a regular basis, but especially before any upgrades. So it's a simple USB drive that if there's any additional licenses, like let's say an angiography, or you wanted to upgrade your anterior segment, then you can just add that simply through the USB, type in your code, your purchase code, and you're ready to go.
Oh, interesting. So you guys actually, you physically mail out the USB sticks, and then the customer just pops them in, puts in their code, and they're on their way.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, Jessica, you're going to be available at the booth for people that have questions?
Yeah, I will. Sure, I'll log in right now.
Excellent. Yeah, because I'm sure there will be questions, and I know the booth is going to be there for at least a month, and people will continue sending questions on ODwire. We're going to have this interview actually up on ODwire later in the month too. So if we have any questions, then I'll forward them on to you so you can see them. But this has been really great, and I hope you guys are having a good time with the conference so far. And anything we can do to help, just let us know.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, that was interesting.
Yep.
So we have.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that people are really excited to start buying some stuff.
I hope so. And again, so let me put up the special so people can see. Whoops. Let's put that up here. Here we go. So now that we've learned all about these different devices, so now, Paul, you know the difference between the ZEISS OCT with angioplex, the ZEISS HD OCT 5000 versus the 500. You now know the difference between those. The Claris 500, which is the ultra-wide field camera. You now know everything. And you can see the different specials that are available here up on the screen. To get the specials, what you need to do is go into the booth. So you go into the exhibit hall, you click on the booth, you go in. I can even show you where. Let's see if I can pull this up so people can see it. Hang on, I will pull it up so everyone can see one more time how easy this is to do. See if I can show you my screen. Okay, boop, there we go. Okay, so again, if you want to take advantage of these specials, you go to the exhibit hall.
Just click on there. Yeah.
Click on whichever booth you're interested in. We can go into Jessica's domain here. And you can see that there are posts. There's a chat box right here. All you have to do is type right into that chat box. You can start a private chat with the folks at ZEISS or do it publicly and then take it private later. It's up to you. And then you can qualify for the discounts, and they'll tell you all about what they are.
Yeah, I guess you want to privately try to do any sort of negotiations with them.
Oh yeah,
you don't want to do that publicly.
No. I'm sure they'll do it privately, but you got to contact the folks this way. This is how they know that you're actually part of the conference, is by being able to get in here.
But I'm sure they're anxious to make some sales today.
Yeah. Well, I think that any sale they can make where they don't have to carry anything to a trade show is a great thing for them. So
that's right.
Yes, this is much easier, and hopefully, folks, if you've gone out to other trade shows before, you've touched this equipment before, you've seen it, you know how it works, and this would be a great place to actually close some of these deals. So that is that. And I think what I'd like to do, since that was the last interview for today, as far as I know, anybody else we're scheduled to talk to?
Not today.
Not today.
We'll be back tomorrow with some more people.
Yes, we will. What we can do, though, what I can leave people with for a while, if we want to close here, I can put on a bit of Dr. Chauce's talk that he did with Jasper and Dr. Leck earlier in the day. I could probably play that right now.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
I could take us out on that, and so people could actually take a listen to that as we exit here, and then hopefully it'll inspire some folks to actually want to enter the conference. I could put it up and let it run for a while. So let me...
To be the diabetes talk.
Yeah, the diabetes talk, if I have it here. Always prepared, right?
Oh, yeah.
Always never prepared. And so let me get that going here. And let me turn that off. So I'm going to get this going, but for everyone, we're going to be back here tomorrow again at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern. To see how the conference is going. We'll take your questions over the night as well. We'll answer them tomorrow.
And we'll have some interesting speakers as
well.
well.
More speakers again tomorrow, and we'll go from there. But I hope everyone's learning a lot. These lectures have been fun, and yeah, I've learned a lot, certainly.
Absolutely.
I didn't know this much about ZEISS's products.
No, the
before.
takeaway for me is that no dilation is not necessary.
That is true.
That you can build a specialty practice using and finally having something that physicians and you can speak with pretty much on even ground. And you can build up, just look at the successful medical optometric practices. But what they all have in common is they have the instrumentation. Because without the instrumentation, you don't have a specialty practice.
That's true. I mean, it is necessary, but it is not sufficient. Because I will also say that you need a plan.
Absolutely.
Whether it's like Dr. Chauce did, where he actively went out, to the endocrinologists and PCP in his areas, or like Dr. Silverberg, We should talk to him again tomorrow more about practice building to see how he did it.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we could have him
Because,
back.
whereas Dr. Chaus is much more of a specialty diabetes practice, I believe it's in his domain name of his practice as well. It's like diabetic eye or something. Dr. Silverbert's practice is just general. It's a general practice.
Right.
And I'm really curious to hear about how he goes about building it out.
And if you don't want to invest in all of the equipment simultaneously, you have to pick that one specialty that you'd like to concentrate on first.
Right.
So if you're in a community with lots of diabetes, you may want to have the equipment that's good for that.
Yep. So why don't we leave you with, I'll get this video running, and then we'll all pick it up tomorrow. So let me see if I can actually get it working without blowing the whole works up.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the lectures are like.
This is always the challenge, right? So let me see if I can do it.
And also, if you've missed any of the lectures, they're online. When will they go online?
So they're on demand immediately. So the ones from today should be up there this afternoon.
Right.
So yeah.
You can watch it and watch it a second or a third time.
Oh man, I hope this doesn't blow everything up, but we'll find out. Here we go.
And for those of you that are watching on ODwire, if you haven't signed up yet, it's not too late.
Oh yeah, no, it's not too late to. In fact, it's not too late for the next month. In fact,
No.
if you want to call,
But
well,
if you want
if you want the
get
deep
deals,
discounts, if you want the deals, do it now. Sign up.
Because I don't know if they're going to keep running it for the month.
No, so sign up now. You have today and tomorrow to get in there. So just sign up. It's free. You'll get a login. You can get into the exhibit hall like I showed you before, and you can qualify for those discounts. So please, if you think you're going to purchase equipment, just do it. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything to come on in and talk to folks and make the contact with the folks at ZEISS like right now.
Right.
Okay, so let me see if I can get this running, and otherwise, that's it for today, and we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.